The definition of light wind can change depending on context and what we're talking about, but in general 10 knots and below we can agree it's definitely light wind because there's no way that you can take off without pumping normally. And in this video we're going to talk about how to at least start taxiing efficiently in light wind and then even take off. Ready? Go!
Everybody just get on down.
If you've watched my video on wing control, you'll know that the airflow needs to stick to the canvas in order for the wing to work as it's intended to. And when the angle of attack increases too much, the airflow cannot stick to the canvas and starts creating turbulence, disrupting the wing's aerodynamics, and this is called backstalling. When backstalling, the wing now pulls in the same direction of the wind and feels like it wants to fall in the water instead of flying sustained by the air. So when we have light wind, we need to make sure we never sheet in too much. A practical tip to do this is to make sure you're always sustaining the wing with the front arm and never pulling too much with the back arm. Keep it relaxed and simply use this hand to control the orientation because that's the only thing that's going to make you go forward when you cannot sheet in. And you can see here my student even moved to the neutral and boom grip, which forces you to sustain the wing entirely from a more upwind point, essentially equating to holding it entirely with the front arm when you have both hands in the normal position. And as you can see, her board has now turned ever so slightly upwind, and this whole position would be sustainable for sailing in this direction. Now let's rewind and take a look at how the wing was behaving when she was holding also the back handle. It's clearly visible that she was trying to maintain a good orientation of the wing, and I stopped on this frame because the wing's orientation is good here, but the wing is already too sheeted in and entering backstall. This means that the wing will not feel like the wind is keeping it up in the air, and hence maintaining the good orientation will be impossible. If we compare it with the position that she reaches just a few seconds later, we can see that the orientation is pretty much the same, but the position of the wing with respect to the wind is completely different. Here the leading edge is pointing towards the wind, which means that the angle of attack is smaller, and this allows the aerodynamics of the wing to start working, and this position allows her to sail and even go upwind. Instead, coming back to this point, we can see she cannot hold the wing in that position, and at the same time she cannot control the direction of the board, which is a direct consequence. To make sure the explanation is completely understandable, let's take a look at it in 3D. The arrow represents the wind, and if we shift the camera position to the same that we have in the footage, we have the same view of the wing, and notice how we can see the back of the wing here. This is because the angle of attack is huge, and if I show you from an orthogonal top view, we can find the angle of attack tracing a line straight out of the neutral handle and take the angle between it and the wind. In this case, we can see it's about 45 degrees, which is way too much for a light wind day. Maybe in a day with 30 knots, it would be okay because the force of the wind is enough that it can beat against the leading edge and turn around here, sticking to the profile of the canvas all the way to the trailing edge. But on a light wind day, that's not gonna happen. Now, if I put the wing in the same position she gets to with the neutral and boom grip, now we can only see the inside of the wing because the angle of attack is actually very small, and this is what light wind days allow for. Anything less than that and you'll just be endlessly messing around like this. Now, a little trick that is very useful for those who have a boom is to slide your front hand lower on the boom, because this will make you feel the tension more on the front arm and will naturally make you sustain the wing with the front arm, which is what you need to avoid accidentally sheeting in too much. You can try this drill of holding it only with the front arm on the beach using your wrist to give the orientation to the wing. Again, this is all aimed at avoiding backstalling by training your muscles that who's really doing the work is the front arm, and the back arm should really be relaxed and just aid in the orientation with very delicate pressure. So this exercise teaches you to control the wing first entirely with the front arm, despite being a little bit more effort for it, and then you can add the back arm with its gentle touch to alleviate the extra effort that the front arm was doing, and pay attention that the wing remains in the exact same position as you add the back arm. In fact, with light winds, you could even use your backhand like this, only with the tip of a finger. This arm is holding the wing up, and this hand is just applying a small pressure to keep the orientation good. Now, light wind is necessarily going to require some pumping to take off, but even just to move forward, it can be really helpful. Sometimes with super light wind, even if you're holding the wing correctly, but you're just holding it still, you're moving super slow, and it seems like you don't make much progress. But if you pump the wing, you'll start moving forward, and the phenomenon I also discussed in the wind behavior video will take place. Because of your speed, your apparent wind will increase, because your forward motion is generating headwind, which will sum with the real wind both in terms of strength and direction to give you this. This is your apparent wind. It is called like that because that's how the wind appears to you while riding. And when the real wind is light, the behavior of the apparent wind is way more obvious. As soon as you start moving forward, you will notice that it suddenly seems like now there is wind, and so you can use that to take off, especially if you also add board pumping. The technique for wing and board pumping and for how to put them together in perfect sync is explained in other videos, which you'll find in the description. Now, another consequence of this dynamic between real and headwind is that the lighter the real wind is, the more your apparent wind will be made of headwind, until it's coming from basically in front of you and you cannot use it to ride. I once had a tricky experience where the wind was so light I couldn't come back, and you can hear about that in this video. Equally, if you start going downwind just a little too much, you will cancel out the real wind with your headwind, and so it will be impossible to sail. So basically, when the wind is light, you have to pay a lot of attention to the direction you're going and always go crosswind or ever so slightly upwind until you reach a speed where you're basically to the maximum upwind angle and you cannot go any more than that. When the wind is so light that even while holding the wing with only one hand, the tail is falling down, you probably need a specialized equipment for light wind in order to take off. So when you find yourself in this kind of situation where the wind doesn't hold the wing up, meaning there are 5 knots or less, you're going to have to use your arms to hold it up a little bit. Or you can just take a rest and maybe swim back. But if your goal is to move to an area of better wind, if you wait in a good position, as soon as you have a little gust, you'll be able to use it more quickly. So, to recap, the most important thing to pay attention to when you're riding in light wind is backstalling, and then you have to understand the dynamics of the apparent wind and pick a good direction. This video is part of a playlist called Technical Knowledge for Beginners, which is part of the beginner course. You will find all the videos in the description, so check them all out, have a great time and keep flying.